You are live. Okay, apparently we are live. We didn't do the countdown because I'm just learning this. We are all learning this. Please excuse my lack of what's the word? Netiquette, I guess. But we
Brilliant.
will get there at some point. We have 11 people watching. Hello world. Hello 11 people. Hello everyone who might be listening to this later on as a podcast. Hello to everyone who might be watching this as a video.
Yes,
Um,
and we're paying for the CNS out of our own pockets as of today. So yes, well done us.
yeah,
Excellent.
finally we get to have our own logo, we get to have our own stuff, so enjoy, because this has been paid for by our hard-earned money. Anyway, we are live finally for the second time. uh, I'm Tomek, or Tweak, as you might see at the bottom of the screen. We also have my co-host Joker. Hi dude.
Hello.
And as you could see in the what's the word, the preview of the show, and as you can see in the show description, we have the wonderful Jay from Mohawk Miniatures. Hi, dude. How are you?
I'm good. I always enjoy people talking me up a little bit with introductions for things like this because I'm sat here honestly thinking most of this is complete rubbish. I'm not wonderful at all.
Well, listen, my experience with you is I saw you for the first time at the LGT last year when we
Yeah,
came with Joker to do the coverage. I saw your miniatures. I believe you got to the Shadow Round, and we got to sit there
yeah.
in the evening, with just 16 people, or even less than 16, or fewer than 16 people, and just could have a look at you playing with your wonderful Imperial Knights and so on. I thought everything about this guy is wonderful. So, you
Okay,
know,
I'll take it. We'll just go with that from now on.
please do.
Wonderful Jay. That'll
Please
do.
do, because I don't have anything else. So listen, everyone. Today, I think we will take a break from the series that we started a couple weeks ago, which is the My 40K Job series, and we are going to delve into something a little bit different. Although, as you will see very soon, we are not going very far away from that previous topic. And I think I mentioned in the preview thingy in the banner that we have a big announcement. I think we will segue to that in a moment as well, because as we start talking about certain things, the right moment will come to do the big announcement. But first of all, to everyone who is not familiar with Jay, uh, Jay, maybe you are the best person to introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And why did we invite you to a show to talk about the WTC, or the World Team Championships, if people don't know what the abbreviation stands for?
Well, apparently I'm the wonderful Jay, so that's what I am and what I do. I don't really have a 40k job. I have a 40k life. Um, I
Not
stream for
much
a living.
difference, I think.
There isn't a lot of difference, no. But I stream 5 days a week on my own channel, Mohawk Miniatures on Twitch. Um, I have Patreon and all the usual things that content creators do to fund being able to do this as a job. I am a commission painter. So that's mostly what I do. As well as that, and to segue into talking about the World Team Championship, I was a referee last year in Mechelen, the first World Team Championship. Some of you guys that have been around and seen a long time remember, of course, the ETC prior to that. And I was a referee in Mechelen, had great fun, fantastic week, got to meet so many people, got to talk to people that I only knew through the internet and so on beforehand. It was brilliant. This year I've been invited back, but as head referee of the World Team Championship. So in November, myself, Neil, and Tom, who are the two guys that really organise the bits that the players see, essentially, had a talk, and Neil has sort of moved into a different role, and I've taken over as head referee for the WTC, which involves at the moment waiting for 10th more than anything else, but has involved things like rewriting FAQs for all of 9th edition, a lot of tournaments, specifically in Europe, play using our FAQ. So that's quite an exhaustive job. You've got to try and nail down everything as much as possible in language that everyone can understand. And essentially getting everything ready for this year's event, which is going to take place at the end of the first full week of August, which I'm really looking forward to. So
All right. So let's start at the very beginning. For the people who are completely unaware of what World Team Championships are, I mean, I think it's in the name, but
Yeah, it's a
still,
clue there. Yeah.
there is a tiny clue there. But still, if we wanted to, in a couple of sentences, explain to people what this is, how this is different to any other tournament in the world, like what would be your definition of the WTC and why is it worth to pay attention to it?
So for me, I always tend to define it as it's a little bit like the Olympics of 40K. Now, obviously, 40K doesn't really have Olympics because most people look like me and less like someone like Hussein Bolt or whatever, in which case you'll understand that I'm not going to run, let alone 100 meters. Um, but effectively, each nation can put forward a team, and it's not necessarily always the 8 best players from that nation, but it is definitely the best team put forward from that. And that's the big thing that separates the WTC as a tournament style from tournaments that most people might be familiar with, so singles events where it's just you against another 100 or 60 or whatever number of players that are there. You have to function as a cohesive team. You play in the WTC 8 players in a team against another 8 players, and your team needs to score more points throughout all of your games combined than your opponents do. If you don't quite score high enough, you can still draw despite winning. If you do score well, you win. So it's really important to have that good team synergy. And for the WTC, like I said, it is kind of like the Olympics where your nation puts together its best team. You can expect them to be mostly the best singles players in that country. And so I think for anyone that wants to look at it and be involved and be interested in it, the smallest thing you could think about it is here's going to be probably the top 8 people that play in my country. These are people that I might have played at events. They're people that might be your friends, people that you know through the hobby and so on. And they are representing your country on a international level. It's probably the pinnacle, I think, of international 40K.
Absolutely. I mean, it's unlike anything else in the world, I would say. And having spoken to the likes of Typhus, Pumba, people from the Polish national team, it becomes so addictive that
Yeah.
at some point they don't want to do anything else. Like the Polish national team, the people playing on that have actually stopped caring about the singles events. They
Mhm.
treat them, yeah, they treat them as sort of practice.
Practice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like an area to sort of try new builds and just face different people, see how armies face different sorry they do against different armies. But essentially what they live for, what they practice for, what they count for, what they wait for throughout the entire year is the team's events. So, and this is the pinnacle of what you can get with team events, I guess. So uh how is this one exceptional? I mean, throughout the year, the different things are announced, different things are released. One of them is terrain. What
Yeah.
what specific is there about WTC terrain that makes it different than, I don't know, GW events? There's
I've
a lot to
played in a
unpack, I
couple of
guess.
GW events, and as someone that is very well known for playing knights, as you've alluded to, that is one of my least favorite styles of terrain because you can't hide a knight on it. The terrain for the World Team Championship is extremely well balanced. There's a lot of work that's gone into it. Obviously, I can't talk about what 10th edition might bring as far as terrain is concerned. We don't know. One of the biggest differences between our event and most other events is the density of terrain. We have 3 different styles of table, effectively light, medium, and heavy. And during a team event, unlike a singles event where you just get matched into one person, you go off, you play, and that's what you do. In a team event, you pair against people. And then one of you that's taking a pair, the person that's like the defender, essentially gets to choose what table they're going to. And so you can use the fact that there are 3 different kinds of terrain to tailor the gameplay experience you're going to have. If you're a army that relies on shooting your opponent and you've been paired in someone that relies on being in close combat, you can pick a table with very light terrain because you know you'll get better firing angles. Equally, the converse is true. If you're an army that relies on getting to your opponent and being in close combat, or an army like, say, Harlequins, where historically you want to be moving around the board and hiding as much as possible all the time, then you might want to pick a heavy terrain table. There's another facet to it as well, which is what makes team events. It's just another level up on 40k. If you go into a team event, you will know that certain players on your team, their armies have weaknesses. And if one of those armies is an army that's like, listen, I cannot play on a light board, so my army needs the terrain to survive.
To hide, yeah.
Then you can just go, right, okay, I'll take the light board. I might lose my match, but if it means that you win and the rest of our team wins their match because I've jumped under the bus and taken the hit for the team here, then we win as a group. And this is why team events become that entirely addictive thing, is because it's not just about you trying to win an event. It's about you and your squad, your team, all doing that to win the event and working together. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely interesting this year, I think, because we have. I mean, I've been following the UKTC scene very diligently and closely this year, and you have players like Vic Vijay, David
Yeah.
Gaylord, who are extremely successful singles players, and it's
Yeah.
going to be even more interesting to see them because both of them won. So Vic qualified for the Team England, and David qualified for Team New Zealand.
Yeah.
So we're going to see them duke it out at the WTC. But it's going to be extremely interesting to see them, hide their egos, hide their like individual agendas, and actually work this into, or weave their skill into the skill of other players. Their Team England is so stacked with individual talent. Nassim, Mani, Vic, whoever else is there. It's going to be extremely interesting to see. What comes out of it, what of this concoction of talent, ego. I don't know what else.
Absolutely.
So how do teams deal with that? Like, because the teams are not only players, right? There are other members of the teams as well.
Frequently, yeah, not always, but frequently. So you can bring like support staff, basically. Team England last year, I think, had 5 coaches with them. I know Adam Lane was there, Nathan Roberts. There were another couple. Team US, I think, easily 4 or 5 other people. It's really, really useful for a lot of things in a team. So you could have people that are there to help with the pairing. So a pairings metric is the most important thing about a team event. Somebody puts forward an attacker, somebody puts forward 2 defenders. The attacker picks a defender. They go off and play. The defender chooses what table they want to play on, and then the remaining defender becomes an attacker. You get 2, and it's this sort of back and forth. And getting the right people lined up to get the matches that you want is the key to winning a team's event. And there's a lot of work that goes into that before the event. I'm going to a team's event this weekend. I'm not expecting to be particularly successful. I'm playing Nurgle Demons. But we've already gone through. They're great demons. They're terrible. Don't play them. They're absolutely awful.
Unfortunately.
But my job is to lose well. So like I was saying earlier about going under the bus and taking the hit, my job is to go into matches that the rest of the team doesn't want to play, knowing that I can score passively and probably bring a loss closer than my opponent wants it to be so my team can do better.
Essentially steal points.
Yeah, that's the plan. I'll let you know on Monday how it went.
Right. We'll see about the practice. Well.
But with all of these things, the team dynamic is the most important thing. So nobody can afford to have the big chip on their shoulder ego. You can't have the big swinging dick in your team unless you can guarantee you can feed that person the match they want every time. It's very important you all work cohesively. If you've got someone on your team that's great with the pairings, they could be support coach, they could be a team player like one of your captains, then that's their job and they focus on that. If you've got someone on the team that's there because they want to help out, it's making sure terrain is set up for the players for the tables. Objective markers are laid out so they don't have to do that when they get to the table. It takes some of the stress off rushing around at the start. Even something as simple, and this sounds ridiculous, but something as simple as making sure your players are fed and watered is huge. Last year at the Neckarhal, which is where the WTC takes place, Belgium had an all-time high for
Heat
temperature.
wave or something.
It was ridiculous. Like, it was hot outside. And on Monday morning, before the War Master started, which is a singles event that precedes the WTC, and if you want to play against some like world caliber players, some of the WTC players, and you've not been able to qualify for your national team, the War Master is a really good place to go to get some of that experience, by the way. But even before there, before we had anybody in there, I walked through the hangar doors, and it was like 43 degrees in there. It was horrific.
Oh, the smell must have been amazing.
Dude, I've done some jobs in my time, and there's not a lot that can compete with a fragrant day 3 of a 40k tournament, I will admit.
That's the best euphemism I've heard for that situation. Sticky
We had
situation.
very big doors open to allow some breeze, and it was for very good reasons. Anyone that's listening to this and doesn't already pack deodorant when you go to an event, please, for the love of all that's holy, take some deodorant with you. But yeah, the event was hot. We had one player on the German team, actually. He's a really, really lovely dude. I thought he was going to pass out. He was tired. He was sweating, and like his captain,
dehydrated.
We might have to sub him out for somebody else, and he might have to go. I said, look, just make sure you've got someone that can give him some salt and some fluid. Like, so get some like potato chips or something in, drink plenty of water, because your body needs these things to keep going. And having somebody in your team that can do that so your players can just focus on playing is huge. So if you can take somebody, it's advisable to.
All right. I mean, that's very useful piece of advice. If you want more of that, last year before the LGT, we did a series of interviews with people going to tournament, going to the LGT, because it was called Road to the LGT. One of the guys that we spoke to for the first time back then was Innes Wilson from Team Scotland, and he actually gave like a lengthy explanation on how to prepare for events. So he mentioned stuff that you usually don't think about, like getting hydrated, having the right amount of protein before you get in, and so on, all that. But he also said like he brings a mat that he puts on the floor. He takes off his shoes and he stands on the mat, because if you play for 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 days, not only are you look at
I
that.
thought that wasn't that Jay's signature move?
We had this at the LGT. I've taken this to Amsterdam, Germany, New Mexico. Honestly, this and bare feet, that's the way.
I mean, I know how I feel after 5-6 hours of a tournament, not to mention a couple of days. And especially when I saw what the guys at the LGT do, where they start the invitational, like yourself, I think, on Friday, and then play through Saturday, Sunday, onto Monday.
Possibly Monday, yeah. And on Saturday, on Sunday, you might be playing a fourth game in that day.
Yeah.
I made it through to the fourth game and then lost against Nassim, unfortunately. But I played in the Invitational just the one game. Then I played a friend that was there. So that was 2 games, 3 games on a Saturday. So that's 5, 9 games. And I was like, right, I hurt a bit now.
Yeah.
And that's even with the mat. I've had motorbike accidents. I've had old injuries from a fighting career that just plague me a little bit with standing up for that length of time. Without the mat, I will finish an event. I will then go back to my hotel room or Airbnb or whatever, and I'll have to have a shower and massage my ankles and things before I can start doing anything else, even like having dinner. With the mat, I just go for food. Quick change of shirt and off, done. It's honestly a game changer. And for 25, 30 quid for a yoga mat, it's well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to sell your own branded ones now.
I thought about it, but I don't want people standing on my logo. So
with their sweaty, nerdy feet. Yeah. Yeah. Listen, everyone. So I'll use this moment to pause our WTC conversation, because I think the people who are here, the 9 people who are watching us right now, but also everyone else who tunes in later or via the podcasting streaming media, they deserve what I promised. So they deserve the big announcement. And again, I think this is a big announcement. I like to think that it's a big announcement for me and for Joker. Uh,
It is,
but
definitely is.
yeah, but it's probably also a big announcement to anyone else who would like to see the WTC happen live. And this is because Contact Lost has been invited to come to the WTC to do live streaming. There are going to be several teams doing live broadcasting, but some of them are going to be like language specific, like French,
Mhm.
for example. Contact Lost is coming to do the coverage in English, and then of course for the Polish people who are going to be following, we will drop some like messages in Polish in the Polish Discord and so on as well. But the primary big announcement today is that Contact Lost is doing the WTC and is going to the WTC, which for us is absolutely mind blowing, and we hope that it's also mind blowing for you. Now, uh, with that in mind, what we are going to do, so Typhus, Joker, and myself, we are in discussions right now how to um, organize the, let's say, our shows in such a way that we do nice little introduction, nice little prep for people to be prepared for the WTC. And today's episode is essentially the first one in the series to start introducing the WTC to the broader audience. Because, as I said at the beginning, I still encounter people who tell me that they don't know what the WTC is, that they haven't experienced the WTC, they didn't know that they have a national team in their country. So we will do everything that we can to bring the WTC to the people, and then we are going to stream it so that people can see live for themselves whether it's worth it. And maybe next year, who knows? Maybe you join the WTC, perhaps not as part of your national team, but as a mercenary, because this is also a topic that we are going to cover. We have some people that we know that went there as mercenaries and had great fun. So we will do an episode about that as well. Make sure that you let us know either in the chat or in comments or reviews or wherever what you want to listen about, whether there are any aspects of the WTC that you would like to hear about, because as I said, Typhus, myself, Joker, we are going to be writing articles, preparing episodes, doing live shows, etc., so that you can be prepared as possible when the event drops. So
To clarify just a little bit, we won't be streaming actual games. That's what the other teams will be focused on. We'll be doing a studio kind of thing. Like most popular examples, probably something akin to Soccer Saturday or Football Saturday. Why am I saying soccer? That's useless. Either way, we've sort of done this at the LGT last year, which we've mentioned. And if you want to, you can check that out on the LGT fan page and let us know if you've got any feedback. We'd love to hear it.
exactly.
Stop
So
interviewing people with mohawks is my advice on that one.
no, definitely not. Definitely, inviting you was one of the best choices that we could have made. Um, so let's capitalize on that, because I know that your time is precious and your time is limited. So let's move on. We started. This is like an introduction and sorry, introductory episode to the WTC, so it's impossible to cover all
Mhm.
the aspects of it.
Yeah.
But we did start with the terrain. We said that the terrain is different, that playing as teams in general is just very much different to any other kind of event. There are a lot of things that come into play. Again, do check out Typhus's article on StatCheck about building teams and
Mhm.
pairings and the pairing matrices. That's probably the best, if not one of the best articles that I have ever read about team events and pairings. So
Nice.
do check this out.
Tyson
Um,
has got a lot of experience doing that. Like
yeah,
he really knows his stuff.
and if you don't know who Typhus is, then go to our blog, because yesterday I dropped an article about, well, an interview with him about him playing Harleys in the ninth edition, and he introduces himself there. So if you don't know what his qualifications are to talk about this, that interview has all the qualifications in it. So moving on, you've mentioned that your job before the WTC is to create the rules, is to create or clarify faction rules for different
Mhm.
factions and so on. So how are those rulings made? Is it your arbitrary decision, or is it with like a host of people that help you do that? Do you consult the players, for example, in advance? How does that work?
Basically, put a load of answers up on a dartboard, put a blindfold on, and just go for it and see what comes up. This comedy. No, absolutely not. It's something that, like I said earlier on, our FAQ is used in Europe a lot by a lot of different people. I know that most tournaments in Germany use our FAQ. A lot in France use our FAQ. And when you think about the number of players in these areas that are using that document, it's got to be done well. So just in the same way as any decision is made at the WTC, we have a council of referees essentially, and we discuss the ruling that should be made. Now, where possible, we rule with rules as written, as in what it says in the book, as essentially our answer. Sometimes it needs a bit more explanation to just clarify this works this way. The words. I'm not going to say that GW are bad at wording things because I really don't think they are. Sometimes there are things that could just be a little bit clearer, and especially when you start thinking about the fact that if you look at all the different languages that people play 40k, and there's going to be a few things that are just missed or lost in translation, right? So sometimes what we're doing is just clarifying this works this way. You can do this once or this number of times, or you reroll just a dice roll over one or all ones, whatever it might be, right? There's normally myself, Tom Adriani, who's the head of the WTC, and then 3 or 4 other refs as well that basically sit on a Discord call. We go through things that people have brought to our attention, like we have this question about this army, the way this interacts. It's normally a lot of new codices. Like when Guard came out, we had lots of questions about that. Obviously, when World Eaters came out, we had a lot less questions about that. They run forward and they headbutt things to death. It's not much to ask. But we basically take everything, discuss it, argue both like sides of it. Frequently there's if we rule it this way, this happens, rule it this way, this happens. We look at things like precedents based on other codexes, other elements of the rule book, and we try and come up with something that is the most common sense answer that fits. There are a few things that are ruled rules as intended. Now, I appreciate the hypocrisy of what I'm about to say, but I hate the phrase rules as intent because we all know that one guy who is the armchair general. We're like, listen, I know GW intended this. I'm like, okay.
Sure, you do.
There were 4 people in the room where that rule was written, and you definitely weren't one of them. So you've got absolutely no idea. But sometimes we have to take a stance like that, where the written rule just doesn't quite make sense, regardless of which way you look at it. And so we've got a team of referees that have combined decades and decades of tournament play experience, so we can work out like the best middle ground answer. And then there are some things that go in there because this is what the captains wanted. So, for instance, Necron reanimation protocols. Right? Everyone understands that you kill Necrons, they stand up, and sometimes they stand up and chain out across the table. At the WTC and in our FAQ, that's not allowed. And the reason that's not allowed is because the captains decided, listen, we're going to take a vote and allow that this must be within coherency of stuff that was already there, not stuff that you've just put down to be able to chain out units. So we basically take all those rule sources, people asking questions from within our community on our Discord, people asking questions to us at events, books themselves, and then the captains making decisions for how they want the game to be played, essentially. It was a long answer. I think I got it.
So, what does the workflow for that look like? I mean, let's say a new codex is released. Do you or Tom go through it looking for holes in the rules writing, or is it more often, captains come up with the questions?
Everyone, basically. think about competitive 40k. One of the ways to make the strongest army that you could is by taking something that abuses, bends, or breaks a rule that's in the main rulebook and making that the most efficient way of doing that. So whenever we start getting new books, new information come in, there's plenty of people out there trying to break it to get it to be the most strong, powerful army they could put on the table. So that already is a lot of information. Okay. And some of that information gets to us via online, looking at people's lists that they've run in tournaments and go, oh, Christ, okay, yeah, that is really good. That's pretty strong. Some of it is captains, some of it is us looking at the books, trying to do the same thing for our own armies. I'm not gonna paper over that one. That's definitely a thing as well. And so we get that information by either studying it and finding it ourselves, or by being given that information from somebody else. But it's the sort of thing that's talked about all over the place. Any of the 10th edition rules reveals that have come out where people have got this much information about a subject this big, how many conversations have you had probably the same afternoon those rules were released of someone going, this is the most broken thing ever, I'm going to have 3 of these, I'm going to have this, and I bet it works like this. We've all been there. It's the same kind of conversation we get now. So.
3 p.m. every day, which is the time that it is in Poland when the leaks are released. 0 new messages on Discord, 302, 500.
Right.
Yeah.
We've broken it down. This codex is already, completed.
I've got 2 data sheets, 1 weapon profile, and 1 special rule. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, Death Guard is shit. Just Death Guard is shit. I'm sorry, but
yeah, it is
great.
Death Guard was probably the saddest day on the Discord.
They're fine.
Least amount of messages. Nevertheless, and what does it take for a rule to reach like a captain's vote, rather than you guys making an arbitrary decision, if you will?
The term arbitrary decision sounds a little bit too strong, I think. So it sounds like we've just made a decision just without thought, and that's never the case. I can give you an example though of a rule that did reach a captain's vote last year. So we had in the FAQ that was published in, I'm going to say something like the January before last event, so January last year, there's an entry in there that anything that should be on a model should be on a model. Okay. And there are plenty of things. If you're going through the build guide, you can go, I can just leave that off. It doesn't matter. And a good example of that is things like Harlequin boats, where you've got the hangers on, Drukhari Venoms, similar sort of thing, raiders with crew and people hanging on the sides, all that sort of stuff, right? I don't remember the last time I saw somebody with any of that on a model. It just doesn't happen. For most competitive players, like, listen, it's going to snap off in my case. Or you could argue at the other end of that scale, there's somebody sat there going, well, if I put this on there, they can see me easier, so I'll leave it off. All right. So we had a rule that was
Cabalites and witches, and you're making me glue them on. Damn
exactly, yeah. And you could just use them as witches, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I know. Profit. Suddenly we're making money out of our plastic crack addiction. It's great. But anyway, we had a captain's vote because the captains didn't want that to be on there. That vote happened about 3 weeks before the event. So that had been out for like 7-8 months, I think, by this point. And no one had really read it enough to go, oh, does this mean this? And what happened was we had a captain's vote. They said, right, you don't need to have any of these guys, the like hangers on a vehicle, but you do need to have the crew. And they made sure that anyone that was a gunner or driver had to be in place. Anything else, you have to worry about it. Because at least then the silhouette of the model is exactly as it should be. And that's the sort of thing that could happen when it goes to a captain's vote. If enough captains feel, actually, I don't like this rule, I think we should change it and can come up with a reasonable alternative that is voted on by the other captains, there's a lot of them, then that will be like taken. Essentially, our rule at this point is to enforce the rules of the game as well as the rules that they want to play by. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot that's just a captains have chosen to not play this. Most of them will play the game the way the game is designed to be played, because at every other event, other than someone who uses our FAQ, that's what they're going to have to do anyway. So they're used to it. That's how they play. With competitive 40k being more popular, that's kind of a baseline.
Would you say that it's practicality above everything else? Because I guess if you look, that the models, it's just practical to have them for easier transportation and so on. But it also seems to apply to like terrain, because if you look at the WTC tables, it is just blocks of terrain, very rough, but there are no pebbles rolling on the table or something like that, or barricades or any sort of additions to the table that would create ambiguity or just
Yeah.
make it more difficult, time absorbing and so on. Would you say that practicality is is at its core, or is it again, I don't know, time, um something else?
There's a lot of time is definitely something, and like given unlimited time, you could make every table look like something from the best produced battle reports on the internet and all that stuff, right? But practicality, fairness, that's a big one. Those I think are the two main ones. If we had things like little bits of that moss stuff that people put on the tables to make it look nice, and pebbles and things like you said, most of it would end up on the floor. It just gets knocked off the table. It's just one of those things. And to keep things fair across the board, and that especially at the international level of competition, fairness is something that needs to be like foremost in your mind, because some of these players are traveling literally thousands of miles and spending as a team thousands of pounds, dollars, zloty, to attend the event. You don't want anyone going away with a bad feeling of like, well, everything was great apart from this one game where I had the one ruin that had the window in this side out of all of the tables on the thing, and that's why I lost. So we can't have anything like that. We don't want anyone having that feeling. So people know what they're getting, and they can practice for that up front. Obviously, with 10th and terrain, we'll let you know in a few weeks, boys. I guess it's the best we can do. We'll have to wait and see. But for now, at least everyone knows. And you can practice it on TTS, and there's a load of people that we license our terrain to, so that they can make terrain. So you can buy, probably in whatever country you're watching in, a licensed set of WTC terrain that you can practice on at home if you want.
Well, funny you mentioned 10th. So
a small subject,
Yeah, but was it difficult to make the decision about incorporating 10th? And what challenges does it bring, and how will the rules writing or rules clarifying process look like then?
I've
Especially
left
in that very
the
short
oven on. I've got to go. Sorry, boys.
But the truth be told, you're going to have like a very short span of time to adjust. So why did you make that decision?
You think I made that decision?
Well,
that's a
as
bold statement right there, dude. So
you, as the WTC representative, obviously.
You're the spokesperson now.
Votes we were talking about. This was the captain's decision to play 10th. Now we have. Look, I've worked for GW. We all know that in the summer, every 3 years, new 40k. Same as next year, it'll be new Sigmar. Same as next year, it'll be probably new Horus Heresy, or another like alternate game or so. Maybe that's when they do the old world, old Warhammer remake. Whatever, who knows? So we know that usually before the summer holidays start in the UK, so that all the kids can complain to their parents that they need it and buy it, that's tactical, and play it all summer long, the edition's going to drop. We know that the WTC is, like I said, 7th, and that's a War Master. Was it the 9th or 10th, I think, of August it starts. So we have this much time between a new edition coming out and us playing it. We gave the captains the decision. We gave them 4 choices. A couple that were basically play 9th, a couple that were basically play 10th. One of them was to try and move the dates of the WTC tournament to give them more time for practice, rules digestion, and so on. Unfortunately, that turned out to not be possible, but the captain still wanted to play 10th. So because of that, we're playing 10th. Our rules cut-off date is the 7th of July. We are all expecting, in the same way they did from 8th to 9th, the Leviathan Indomitus box to be out probably around the end of June. It gives us, oh dear Lord, 2 weeks to FAQ it, perhaps. And that's going to be a lot of work. And we said to the captains, look, if you want this, then that's fine. You're all going to have to help. There will be things that don't get written in a way that is super easy to digest. For instance, when we had 9th edition, and I only noticed because of like updating the FAQs, there were a lot of things that were frequently asked questions, despite the fact that now we just accept them and know them as this is the way you play, because things were different enough. And so we had to have things put in the FAQ that seemed super self-explanatory, but it was because it was new. And we might have to do a lot of that this time around. I'm hoping not. GW have done over the last couple of years a great job of creating most of their rules in a way that people can just understand them, understand the interactions that they have between other elements of their army, their opponent's army, the battlefield, their list writing, and so on. Things are a far cry now than they were in like 6th and 7th edition. I think we can all agree to that. So I'm hoping that for this new book, where they've got the busiest and biggest competitive scene that they've ever had, they can take certain things from that on board and ensure that we have something that's super simple. Like their whole premise of simplified, not simple, so far, to be honest, from what I've seen, seems to work fine. There was one rule I read like 3 times. I was like, I don't quite. Oh no, now I get it. And it was one of the army rules for something. I don't remember what it was. Oh, it was tag, spotter, spotted, guided stuff. And like, I think there's something missing here, and I think they condensed it for Warcom, and it's probably going to be a bigger thing in their index fish thing.
Yeah, I just hope that they don't do a lot of those like ambiguous things that leave a little bit of stuff, like a little bit of room for interpretation. Like I
Yeah.
think with engagement range or getting into engagement range, it says something along the lines of move all your models up if possible. And
Mhm.
then what is if possible? Like who decides whether it's possible or not? Like, I would like it to be worded in a way which says move all of them, don't move any of them, either or. But if possible leaves a lot of room for discussions that I don't think
It
players enjoy.
does. Yeah, and I think at the competitive high end level, you'll find, pardon the phrase, but less bullshit. Because they understand, look, you can do this. So I know you can do it. You know you can do it. You know that I know that you can do it. So just do it. It's the table's a little bit further down the hall on day 2 where it's getting a little bit sweaty because someone's desperate to go home 4-1 and they've never done it before. It's those where I find things become a little bit less clear. But as time goes on through an edition, because we see the behavior of people at the top tables because it's streamed, right? At a big event such as our event, we'll have some of those tables streamed. And you'll see that happen. You'll understand, okay, this is how that's meant to work. Then you'll know that going forward, so you can talk it through in the games that you're playing, regardless of where in a tournament hall you are. If you're on table 1 or table 100. If you've seen enough of that, you'll be like, right, okay, so I understand how this works. We know that this is what you're meant to do. So let's just do it.
Okay. So, again, we are going to make the entire series about the WTC. So we are going to go into rules, we are going to go into tables, we are going to go into missions and all that jazz. But one of the things that Typhus mentioned to me when we were sort of discussing how to go about it was that there is a new ruling around the clocks at
Yes.
the WTC. So maybe before we go into like what the change is, what is the point of clocks at events like this one, uh, for all the people who may not have used the clock at a competitive event? Like, why should
Mhm.
we be bringing clocks to events?
Yeah, and how did it get introduced into 40K, given that I don't think GW ever mentioned or suggested using of such at an event?
Never once. And they don't like you using them either. They'd rather you didn't, basically. Because And I think we can all agree with this. They'd rather there was never a reason for you to need to. In an ideal world, yes, 100%, I agree. We should never need to use a chess clock. I play every single one of my games on a clock. I play Imperial Knights mostly. And I know a lot of people that will give me grief for this and like, well, you've got 7 models to move. Like, come on, you don't need to. The point of a clock and the reason they got brought into the game is to do that second variable I mentioned when we were talking about terrain is fairness. The game is a game of skill. It's not a game of like strength or anything like that. It's all about skill, and the skill involved in 40k is predominantly thinking time. Okay, your thinking time and your time spent rolling your shots, moving your minis is important. Without that time, you can't play the game. You have no chance of winning the game. So for that to be split equally between you and your opponent means you both have the same amount of time to play. Now, there's things that happen. Let's say it's my turn and the clock's on me. You've got to do an action and you just do it while the clock is still on me. That still happens. You'll find it happens less the later into the game you get, where time is becoming a little bit more tight. People will be switching the clock back and forth for smaller things. That's natural. You get a little bit more urgency in what you're doing. So you've got to get this done now. But the reason clocks came in a big way is we could go back to the LVO and it would be something like 2019, maybe 2018. I don't remember. There was a very well publicized game between Alex Fennell, who was a brilliant dude, and a guy called Tony. I can't remember his surname, so I'm not going to guess at it. Where Tony didn't take the sportsmanship road to trying to win the game. Spent his first turn, used up an hour of the clock. His opponent then tried to race through his turn. And then he got basically screwed over by his opponent. While trying to do things quickly, he put down some stuff from Deep Strike. His opponent said, well, you can't move that now because you've Deep Struck that. That's the end of your movement phase. And basically put his hands so far up him that he could parrot his mouth open. And that's just a horrible, horrible thing to do.
Yep.
The guy got what came to him, though, because he played Nick Nanavati in the finals, made a mistake, and Nick went, well, look, normally I'd let you have it, but you fucked over Alex, so no, not a chance. Karma, it's a thing, people. So clocks exist to stop things like that. Mm-hmm. We've all probably been to a tournament, played an opponent that, you know, they're not particularly on it. I don't mean mentally. I just mean like they're not really like thinking about the game in your turn. They're waiting for their turn and things take longer. You've probably all had a game at your local club where you've played 2,000 points. It's taken you 5 hours because your opponent's deployment phase took him an hour, right?
Especially if he's playing like a horde army or something like that.
Yeah.
If he has plenty of models. Yeah.
I had a friend that played G Middlecote. His deployment phase to put down the little tokens took 40 minutes. Then in his turn 1, he took another 40 minutes to put his toys down. Like, for Christ's sake, I've got to get home. You know, it's clocks stop that, and they stop it where it does matter. So yeah, sure. If is it your local playing just a fun game for beer and pretzels, it doesn't matter. When it's at the World Team Championships, what we don't want to have happen is someone lose a game because they got to play half an hour of a round where their opponent played 2.5 hours of a round. Clocks are used in pretty much every ITC registered event. They're part of the rules pack. If one person wants it, you play with a clock. That's it. I've been playing Nurgle Demons. Like I said, I've been using the clock. Even at Warhammer Fest, I took a clock. I told all my opponents, listen, the clock's not for you, it's for me. If you clock out, it doesn't matter. The rules aren't here for that. But I need to make sure that my turn 2 deep striking things doesn't take the piss. So the clock is on me so that I can't run too long and put you at a disadvantage. My first round opponent clocked out playing Dark Angels. Like, okay, well, we went around a half an hour into lunch because he clocked out. I still had time on my clock, but that was that event. It didn't matter if you had a clock or not that event. Like I said, I took it to make sure I wasn't taking the mick. So that's why they're important. That's why they got introduced to the game. We have them at WTC because, like I said, fairness is definitely something we have to put first and foremost for our players. Like I said, they've spent thousands and traveled. So.
I'll print you one in the chat saying, played a guy who played Thousand Suns. He took an hour for his first turn doing all his cycle pull. Well annoyed me. Yeah, I think this is supposed to tackle just situations like this one. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
right. So tell me, or tell us, tell everyone, is there any sort of like an etiquette for using clocks? Like, because, for example, I don't play using clocks often. I played once, and it wasn't a pleasant thing because I didn't know when to switch the clock back. Like, do I check my or your rules on my clock, on my or your clock? So it was kind of messy. Is there any way of bringing order to this?
It's a lot to get used to. The first thing I suggest to anyone is practice with a clock. I started practicing with a clock at my local several years ago, still in 8th edition, early 8th edition, because I knew that it would put that psychological like lean on you of gotta go quick, time is running out. And the reality of things, if you've got an hour and a half on the clock at the start of the game, you've got plenty of time. Your first turn could take half an hour because you've got a lot to do. In your third turn, where you've lost half your army, you've got less to do because there's less stuff. So practice is the first thing. Like, it's taking away the psychological pressure that playing on a clock can put you under. That's the first thing to do. Secondly, essentially, the time is on you whenever you are doing something, whenever you are rolling dice, moving minis, looking up your own rules. Sometimes the whole asking questions to your opponent, like if I ask you a question, what army do you play?
Death Guard, Tyranids.
Death Guard, great. Okay, so I say, right, I'm asking you a question about Death Guard. It's about one of your contagions and things like that. You just tell me the answer. Great, that's on my time. I say, right, I need you to tell me about your contagion range, like what it stacks up in different turns. And for a moment of insanity, you've forgotten, like, oh, I'm gonna have to check my codex. Sorry. And you get the book out. For me, while playing, I'll normally give it like 10, 15 seconds if I can find the rule in that time. And that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but most of us know roughly where things are in our book. No issue. If it starts becoming a long thing, then I put the clock on my opponent. In a similar way, you've got reactive strats in a Tyranid army, in a Death Guard army at the moment. I say, right, I'm going to do this. You go, all right, cool. I might use my stratagem. All right. Are you going to? I don't know. I've got to think. All right. Pop. The clock's on you. You've got time to think, and it's your time to think, so you don't feel the pressure anymore. You can take as much time as you want. I've before now, I've put the clock on me, and I've literally done maths to work out the probability of an outcome happening to ensure that I did or didn't need to use a stratagem. And to me, that was a valuable use of my time because I won that game. Having the time to do that is another benefit of having the clock. You can do whatever you want to do with that time. If you want to go out for a cigarette, you can go and do that. I have heard a story about 2 French players that took the clock outside at an event and would tap back and forth when they were taking draws of a cigarette.
And they were smoking the same cigarette.
No, their own cigarettes. So, like, I guess you have a meta there for like a short rolly versus a king size or whatever, you know. But you know, clocks do a lot of things. So the etiquette of a clock, once you've played it a few times, it's very natural. The one thing I will say that not everyone does, that everyone I feel should do, is when you are changing the time on a clock, clock's on you, clock's on me, back to you, back to me, you know, whatever phrase that you want to use, you verbally tell your opponent, I've put the clock on you, I've put the clock back to me. And if you're something that comes up a lot, especially when Tyranids were big with big warrior blobs with Theonopanes and Involns and all this sort of stuff, sometimes your opponent is going to take a while rolling saves, rolling their Theonopanes, allocating wounds, removing models, and so on. There's a lot of time spent there doing stuff. It might very well be a case that I go, right, clock's on you, and you do all your bits and pieces there because it takes a while. It might just be the case that you just go, right, cool, I've rolled my dice, these are dead. Off it, back to you, no problem. So you work with each other in that, and that's where the sportsmanship side of things comes into it. I don't know if you are aware of this. At WTC, we have a very big document that outlines essentially what we expect from players. Sportsmanship is one of them. If you went to, we compared it to the Olympics, you would expect to display a standard of behavior that is befitting a champion from your country. We expect the same thing at WTC. We have sportsmanship fouls that can range from things like you not reminding your opponent about stuff he's got in deep strike. So it's battle round 3, and he's done his movement phase, you go into a shooting phase. Like, before you do, you've left them off the table. Did you mean to? No, I didn't. Right? Now, most players will play like that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the kind of guy that wants to win because your opponent left a unit off the board for turn 3, you're probably a bit of a knob. So most players don't have that worry anyway, and they'll just play properly. But we enforce that with sportsmanship penalties, essentially. And with the clock, there are elements of sportsmanship that come into that as well. Not communicating with your opponent and having that etiquette essentially around using the clock can be something that's penalized that way.
Right, and the way you've described the clock, it's mostly something positive, which is great.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask about such a thing called deathclocking your opponent. Does it happen? How often does it happen? Is it a strategy for some people to deathclock their opponents? And are there ways to tackle that?
So there are people that try and play to time out their opponent as a tactic before the game starts. So like, I'm just going to clock him out and I do what I can to clock him out. And you can normally tell once you've had a bit of experience who these people are and how they play. And it's things like needlessly asking questions, people double checking your movement. Now, if someone's doing that, just be aware that they might be checking it because you've been crap. But people basically taking time in your turn to do things, that's something that happens. Let's just cut through it, okay? Deathclocking is effectively, if you run out of time, you can't do anything else. You make armor saves, you make morale tests, and you complete objectives that you're holding.
Then
so
remove
if you've
models
got
from the table.
primary, yeah, of course, things die and they go away. But you can't fight back, you can't shoot, you can't cast, you can't use feel no pain. You basically can't interact with the table anymore. Your opponent interacts with your models and you remove them.
Do you still score objectives?
Mm-hmm. So if you're on an objective that's uncontested by your opponent, you'll score primary points, right? If you're alive in 4 quarters, you'll score engage because you haven't had to do an interaction. Mm-hmm. If you needed to do the action, raise banners, you're out of time. Tough on that one. So it is very important when death clock rules are in effect, which is every ITC event. That's how they run their clock rules. And now with the new clock rules that I've written for the WTC, they are in effect there as well. If you run out of time, it is extremely punitive to you as a player because you're probably going to lose. You need to be so far ahead that your opponent can't catch you with you unable to act to be able to win. And so it's very important that you are mindful of your time. Most people, before they go to an event, practice with an army a few times. You know, you can probably learn the rules. I will write a cheat sheet of all my unit stats, stratagems that I can use and when to use them, what page number they're on, so I can quickly find information when I need it. You can do lots of things to speed up your gameplay. The decision-making process is the bit you really need to practice in most of the time. And as long as you do that, you probably won't have an issue running out of time very often. There'll be games where it happens, you know, where you've had to really think about something and you've maybe over-invested your time, or games where you were just busting for a dump and you had to run off and do that on your time. You know, whatever it might be, you've run out. Like I said, there are people that will still try to play that game and make you clock out. It's very few and far between. It's very easy, I think, to talk about tournament setting 40k in a negative light because we've all got the odd horror story. I play probably an event a month, 5 games to 6 games of comp 40k a month. That's 60 games a year. For the last 5 years, I've probably played 300 to 400 games of 40k at a tournament. Sometimes towards the top tables, sometimes towards the mid tables, once or twice towards the bottom tables. We don't talk about those. The number of players that I've run into in all that time that have been the guy trying to leverage everything they can do to put you at a natural disadvantage, and not by just playing the game normally, I can count on one hand. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. I've won games because my opponent clocked out. It's not a great way to win. It really isn't. But if in their turn 3, in the middle of their turn 3, they've run out of time, they need more practice with the army. If you've got an army that works in every single phase, Tyranids, Eldar, GSE, there's plenty of them, you need to be able to be quick. Now, if the writing's on the wall, a lot of players just say, look, play on, it's fine. And we've got a provision for that written into the clock rules because we like promoting fair play and sportsmanship. But there isn't there is a need for someone to give up their time. Last year, we had clock rules that were very much designed with good sportsmanship being front and center. Okay, we're going to allow you to use clocks, but we want you to communicate with your opponent and play games out to a natural conclusion where you can, every time that you can. And again, in an ideal world, we don't need a clock at all. They would have worked. We did have people that essentially used that to their advantage a little bit. We had a couple of games that were won because someone ran out of time and went, well, it's okay, I can play on because that's the way the rules are. And that's really hard to deal with. So this year, the rules for the clock are a death clock. Equally, the rounds at the WTC are 4.5 hours long. You've got half an hour for pairings, and you've got 4 hours to play a game of 40k.
That's a lot. That's incredibly a lot.
It's huge. Like in 4 hours, you could play a game of 40k, have a rub down and shiatsu. Be perfectly relaxed for your next game, no problem.
Pretty much.
But you've got time. Now, the clock rules will be the same at the War Master, but at the War Master, 3 hours for the round is the same as most events that we play in the UK, where you've got to get to your table, set up the terrain, have a chat about your army, go through everything else, sort the clock out, and get going. For the team's event, the rounds are so long that I expect no one to be clocked out. It might still happen. And we have I'm going to say, reasonably punitive set of penalties that come in should you clock out or a member of your team that can affect your team's chances of success. These rules have been shared with the captains, I'm going to say about 2 weeks ago. Feedback has been positive. No one's had any negative things to say about this. They're aware that, yes, if my guys fuck up, then we might lose because of it. But they have to fuck up a lot for that to happen. And so they're aware it probably isn't going to be an issue. So there's no problem with it, which is good, I guess.
And when we talk about those punishments, do we mean warnings? Do we mean yellow cards?
I'll go through it if you want.
If you have time, because
Totally, man. It's not a problem. So I've got the clock rules up on the screen here. There are four offenses, 4 levels of offenses, essentially. The first one is just a warning. And it's not even an official warning. It's not noted down anywhere. It's just, we're going to have a chat. All right. And obviously, it is noted down because the referees will know you've had the chat, but it's not like a problem. At the WTC, we have, like, you can have an official warning, and that's like getting a notice or whatever job you work out where the manager is watching you now. It's not even that. It's just, we're going to chat to the player. We're going to chat to the team captain or the coach and say, listen, the dude clocked out. Try and make sure that doesn't happen again. It's okay that he clocked out for now. Not a problem. But try and make sure it doesn't happen again. Go through a few bits to make him more efficient, whatever it needs to be done. The second time it happens is then an official warning. So at that point, we do make a note of something. Now, the reason why these things matter is because they can be compounded. So if you have 2 official warnings, that could be a yellow card. If you have 2 yellow cards, that could be a red card. And it moves on. The other thing to note about these penalties, by the way, is that they are applied to the team. So if one person clocks out, let's say player A out of your team, well, do it in numbers, not letters, because I'm dyslexic. Player 1 clocks out. In the next game, if player 2 clocks out, that's a second timekeeping offense. And that then is a more serious warning. The third one is a yellow card. The fourth one is a red card. Any subsequent ones are red card offenses. I need to make sure this is very clear, though. At the WTC, if somebody gives a red card to you, it's not just expulsion from the event. It is that you are not coming back for at least the next WTC event. We never want to give out one of those cards. We try very hard not to give out one of those cards, but they do have a meaning. Any penalties that are timekeeping fouls don't have that. If you get given a red card, your round score gets adjusted by 50 points. You're not going home. It's all about just enforcing the fact that people need to be a bit more on the ball at an event of this size, of this caliber, with championship players from every country that wanted to participate. It's about making sure they all play and finish their games in a natural conclusion if they can.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go on, Joker.
Sorry, I've got a potentially silly question, but do the time-related penalties stack up with other offenses in any way?
If the other offense is like really bad, then and it's like, listen, we might need to take a significant action at this point, then it could be taken into account. There's language written in the rules to allow us to do that. However, that will not be the norm. Our goal as judges is not to put on the metallic helmet and go out there and be judged red. Our goal as judges is to enforce a standard of play where everybody gets a fair shot. The rules are followed and we have a good atmosphere. We're not Judge Judy and executioner.
Yeah, I think we got as a community, we got to this place where everyone, especially at that high level play, wants to play a gentleman's game.
Yeah.
But it's and this is what the community is generally striving for. But it's just good to have those rules in place. I don't want to, and I guess all of us don't want to make it sound like the WTC is a scary place where you have to first and foremost think about punishments and then about having fun and enjoy. No, but it's important to have those rules.
You can't enforce them if they're not there.
Exactly.
And if you need to enforce them, you need to let people know about them beforehand. So you have to have these documents. They're not fun to write. Like, God, that took me a long time to write. But there's something that you kind of have to have at the element where the game is as seriously taken as we take it. And if let's say Team America, because they've got quite like a long way to go. Team Australia, they've got a long way to go. Let's say their travel expenses as a team were more than $10,000, or well, still Aussie dollars, whatever.
Probably not far off.
10K, right? Then you've got hotel for the week normally, because you want to get over the jet lag at the start, and then you've got a day after at the end as well. So there's time spent there as well. All of the money that people put into it, they need to be assured of the fact. My headphones have just run out of battery. They need to be assured of the fact that they have the right to play well and to have a good shot at every aspect of the game. We don't want anyone having the feeling of, well, look, I'm here and I got fucked over because this rule was written this way and so on.
Yeah, to everyone who hasn't seen that because you're, I don't know, listening on podcast or something, Jay just reloaded his freaking headphones like it was a fucking gun. He just took another clip and just inserted the batteries like it happened every single day.
I can do it blindfolded too.
Yeah, you can tell who has
I can
more
do it with my
experience.
airbrush as well.
You can tell who has more experience doing it. That's admirable.
These are your headphones. There are many like it, but these are yours.
Yeah,
Someone
exactly.
will get that reference.
Full Metal Jacket,
he also
obviously.
did take enough time to ensure that he's talking so that he doesn't miss anything. It's the little things.
The skill level here is it's not just 40K.
I
It's
can do it with
everything.
a drink.
Obscene.
So, are there any other changes to the clock rules that people should be aware of, or have we covered the?
That's pretty much the main headlines. However, I cannot stress this enough. It doesn't matter what tournament you're going to, whether it's a one-day RTT at your local or the World Championships. Read the rules packs. Yeah, they're written for you to read, bizarrely. Just have a read of it. At least skim over it. If you've got any questions, join our Discord. You've got plenty of time to ask. It's all good. There's nothing there designed to catch you out. There's no like small print anywhere at all. But do read them, then you can know exactly what's going on.
Definitely, definitely. People never do that.
I know. It drives me mad. Oh, it's the FAQ questions. Like, so what happens if this means this? It's in the FAQ. Oh, I didn't think to look there.
Oh, there's an FAQ. Yep.
Right.
Um. Anyway, I think we are slowly running out of time that you have generously promised us, and I
Not a
think we've
problem.
covered the majority of the topics that we wanted to cover in this episode. So, Jay, is there anything that you would like to plug? Is there anything that you would like to draw our listeners' attention to?
By all means, drop by the stream. Like I said, I stream 5 days a week: Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday from 9 p.m. UK time, Wednesdays and Saturday daytime from 10 a.m. UK time. We're in BST at the moment, I think. Come by the stream. I paint. I try and do my best to explain what I'm doing and how I'm doing it so you can follow along should you wish to. And I'll answer people's questions when they ask them in the chat and so on. Effectively, when I was a kid, no one would give you any information at all when you were trying to learn how to paint. And the stream started just over 4 years ago. We just celebrated our 4th anniversary. That was a lot of fun. But the stream started so I could answer those questions. So if you're someone that's painting and wants to improve, drop by twitch.tv/Mohawk Miniatures. You can find a few tutorials over on YouTube and Patreon as well, all those sorts of things. And I'm Mohawk Miniatures everywhere.
Great. Joker, anything that you want to encourage people to do?
I'll just enforce the message about reading rules packs. As a something of a TO myself, yeah, it can't be stressed enough.
Absolutely.
It seems silly. You've got to remind people to do that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So read the rules. But if you also want to read something else that is not the rules, then I strongly encourage you that you go to our blog, which is in the description, is linked on our Facebook, and yeah, just visit that. We are now doing a series called Polished Faction Focuses, which essentially is a series of articles, interviews actually, with the members of the Polish national team or the Polish faction specialists that the Polish national team turns to when they are choosing armies for the WTC, etc., etc. And we interview the people from the national team to find out how armies played in previous editions, how they played in the ninth edition, what to expect in 10th edition. If an army has already had like a preview or a faction focus by GW, then the people also give their reaction to the preview and they try to figure out what the army is going to be. This is a series aimed both at seasoned players like everyone here, but it's also aimed at people who are new to the hobby who don't know which army to choose, and yeah, perhaps they help you because it's the people who are in the know encouraging you to pick this or that army. So give that a read. And
You
apart
might
from that,
think it's pointless when we're nearing the end of an edition, but we will be visiting these articles to check whether the forecasts given by the players have changed or are completely trash in light of the 10th edition meta.
yeah,
It's never
that's
pointless either. Like, it really isn't. So many people are like, oh, I'm over 9th, it's finished, I'm waiting for 10th before doing anything. Anything that is somebody that's experienced giving you like pointers on thought processes and logic, that goes way beyond data sheets. Like, it's still going to be useful.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and these guys really know their stuff. So make sure that you read that because again, you might be new to the hobby and you have a problem choosing the army, but you could also be a seasoned player that might be thinking of changing a new army or hasn't thought of picking up a new army, and this might actually encourage you to do so. So give that a read, and apart from that, please like, subscribe, follow, and whatever else. Thumbs up us, thumbs up Jay and his channel, and let's make this community grow even bigger. And yeah, watch this space for more episodes on the WTC, more 40k job, and whatever else comes to our minds. Um, with that, I thank you, Jay. you've been an amazing guest, and I hope we can have you over again and again and again to talk about the
Nice.
WTC and more. And thank you, Joker, for being an amazing co-host as always.
Yeah, and thanks to you for hosting this.
And last but not least, I've noticed that we had like around 10 people watching us consistently. It might sound like a small number, but to me, it's absolutely amazing. So thank you to everyone who has been with us, who has been listening, who has been liking, and so on and so on. As I said, stay tuned for more because we will repay you for your commitment and for sticking with us. And with that, thanks everyone, and until next time. Bye bye.
Peace out.
Bye.